I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be looking at 3 categories, which means we are in the thick of Oscar season, but they're all related. The Best Original Score category, the Best Original Song category, and the Best Sound category. But if you guys are new to this series, what I do every single week is pick a different Oscar category and do a deep dive into it, do my analysis, do my thoughts, and give ultimately my 5 predictions for that category with some possible contenders. Now, these aren't my final predictions, but they are relevant predictions of where we are right now in the season, and they probably won't change drastically. They are just to give you a snapshot of the overall race to help you make your predictions and to keep you informed every single week, because a lot of channels will do Best Actor and Best Lead Actress, but when you're trying to get your full, Great Gold Derby score or win your Oscar pool, you want to figure out these technical categories, because these categories, not a lot of people do a lot of thinking about them, but sometimes if you do the deep dives, if you watch the videos from the deep dives that I've done, you figure out certain things, more common trends that happen over and over again that will sort of give you that extra edge to win your Oscar pool or do well in Gold Derby or just to predict the Oscars and feel good about that. But you guys have been showing a lot of support for the series so far, commenting below, liking the video. I still really do appreciate that. So please comment below your predictions for these categories or just some of your thoughts on the video. That's very well appreciated as well. But this is going to be a long video, so without further ado, let's jump into the first category I'm going to be talking about today, which is the Best Original Score category. Starting off with my first nominee, which I think will be Oppenheimer. This is from Ludwig Göransson, who has been nominated in the past and won for his score for Black Panther. So a past nominee that is really helpful for this category. They usually like to nominate past nominees. This is also, I expect, to be a very well-liked movie. And if you've seen the film, like I'm sure many of you have, the score is integral to the plot and to the success of the film, keeping up that momentum. There is a lot of score, and oftentimes when you're studying the Oscars, it just makes sense to pick the most of something, particularly when it comes to these technical categories. The movie with the most costumes wins, the most sound wins, or in this case, the most score wins. And this is a movie that's almost scored from beginning to end. A lot of the dialogue scenes have that score, like I mentioned, to keep up that momentum, and I think it's a really terrific score as well. Plus, Nolan's other movies have been nominated in this category. Think of Dunkirk, think of Inception, think of Interstellar. So I think that there will be a trend, and that will continue for a Nolan Oscar movie to get nominated in the Best Score category. Then my second prediction for this category is going to be Killers of the Flower Moon. And for a lot of these technical categories, it often helps to be just a well-liked movie, because if everyone likes your movie, they're just going to nominate it in a bunch of different categories. A bunch of different people will appreciate it. And when we think of Martin Scorsese, we don't always think of a score. We always think of songs, right? You think of Layla and Goodfellas, or, Main Streets or Scorsese's use of Rolling Stone throughout his career. We don't always think of scores. But when you actually look into his movies that do have scores, Age of Innocence, Hugo, they actually do get nominated. So it's not the fact that people don't like his collaborators in terms of the score. It's because Scorsese usually doesn't have scores. He usually uses songs. But when he does have scores, like I said with Hugo, like I said with Age of Innocence, they do get nominated. So I do expect that trend to continue here, especially because this is a movie that doesn't have as much songs that some of his other films do. It relies more on the score. So I'm a believer in the success of the film as an Oscar movie. I'm a believer that people will appreciate Scorsese and his track record of getting his composers, when he does have scores, nominated. But then I think the big thing, the reason why I have it all the way here at number 2, is because this is from Robbie Robertson, who passed away just a couple of months before the movie was released. And because that, Scorsese was asked a lot about him during press, and he mentioned a lot about him. The fact that he came from an indigenous community and grew up on a reservation himself, so he has that sort of personal connection to it. The fact that this is going to be his last score, unfortunately, because he passed away. The fact that he was a close collaborator with Scorsese all the way back to the 70s with The Last Waltz. So there is a sort of this is our narrative to be built. This is our last chance to nominate Robbie Robertson. We never nominated him before. There's sort of a personal connection with the work. This is a movie we already like. All these little sort of extra elements, and I really think the narrative will push it over the edge of a nomination. because it's a well-liked movie, yes, because Scorsese's movies get nominated in this category when he does have a score, but also because of the narrative of Robbie Robertson, this is being his last movie. I think that's a compelling reason for certain people to want to honor him and honor his work by giving him a nomination. And then my third pick, I'm going to go with Elemental. And what's really key about this category, the Best Original Score category, is that it's an old boys club. They like to nominate the same people over and over and over again. Just look at John Williams. He has 48, almost 50 nominations. And then even modern day composers, Hans Zimmer has 12, Alexander Desplat has 11. The composer of this film, Thomas Newman, has 14. So when you look at this category, you have to think, okay, who are going to be the repeat nominees? And if you actually look at the past 5 years, because the Academy really changed about 5 years ago. I didn't want to go too far back. You want to keep the data relatively recent. But the past 5 years, there's an average of 3.6 out of the 5 nominees that go to past nominees. They like to nominate the same people over and over again. And so essentially 4 out of the 5 slots every year go to somebody, a composer who's been nominated in the past. So use that information and try to figure out who those people are going to be. When you make your 5 predictions, you have to sort of keep it in with historical trends. Don't put a bunch of new people in there who've never been nominated before just because you like the movie score. When you're trying to be analytical about this, when you're trying to make smart choices and process, sometimes it makes sense to go with a Thomas Newman for Elemental, just because he's been nominated so many times. But then you may go, Connor, well, why are we picking Elemental and on another scored film that he did? Well, recently animated films have been doing very well. In the past 5 years, there have been 3 of the past 5 years in which an animated movie got nominated in this category. Soul even won. So there is a connection with this branch and appreciating animated movies and their scores. And then also when you talk about Pixar movies, 7 Pixar movies have been nominated in this category, winning for movies like Up or even Soul most recently. So there's a connection between Pixar movies and this category. There's a recent connection between animated movies and this category. Those really help, plus the fact that this is from a 14-time nominee. I think that should make it clear enough for a nomination. And then my 4th slot, I'm going to predict poor things, because the inverse of what I just mentioned about this category being an old boys club is that there's usually at least 1 nominee a year who is not a past nominee. So usually about 3 or 4 out of the 5 nominees are from past nominees or past winners, guys like John Williams, Alexander Desplat. But there's usually at least 1 new person every year. And I actually think the fact that this composer, Just Ken Barbie, the fact that this is the first film he's ever scored, this is his first IMDb credit, the fact that he is a first-time composer will help him. But the fact that his score is so unique, I think sort of ties into that narrative. They like to nominate their guys who do the traditional sort of orchestral type piano ballads or what have you for the scores, but then they'll always nominate some weird guy, right? So they have Son Lux gets nominated last year for Everything Everywhere All at Once for this very sort of strange droning score in that movie, electronic. Same thing with The Power of the Dog, nominates Johnny Greenwood gets nominated for that film for his sort of eclectic score, we'll call it. And if you've seen the film, the movie's very weird, and there's a couple of the tracks from the movie that's been released, and the score is equally as weird. So you have a unique, electronic, weird, strange score. I think the fact that it is so weird and in your face and unique and different, combined with the fact that this is a new composer, people will be like, okay, we'll nominate our favorites, the guys we nominate every year, but then this one's really exciting and new and different and stands out. I think that actually will help its chances. Plus, Poor Things I expect to be a very well-liked movie, so that doesn't hurt either. Then, in my 5th slot, I'm going to go with The Zone of Interest. And when I was looking at some other people's predictions to try to figure out what are the possible contenders this year, I was surprised, shocked to say, that The Zone of Interest wasn't really a contender. IndieWire didn't have it in its predictions. Variety didn't even have it in its top 10 possible contenders. Nobody on Next Best Picture or some of these other award sites yet even predicted it, which was strange to me because this is from Michael Levy, and Michael Levy very rarely does film scores. So you may go, oh, Connor, she doesn't really, it's too weird, her scores. If you heard her scores for Under the Skin or Jackie, you may go, oh yeah, that's right, her scores are too weird, so she won't get nominated, right? Well, she's been nominated in the past, first of all, for Jackie. So that's a positive sign that they like to nominate past people. She's already been nominated before. That's a good sign for her. Then you consider, okay, well, maybe Michael Levy's most recent scores haven't been nominated. Her most recent score was Zola, and that wasn't really an Oscar movie. I think The Zone of Interest is an Oscar movie. I think it's going to be even better than a movie she did get nominated for in terms of Oscar nominations. being Jackie. So I think this is going to do better than Jackie, and she got nominated for Jackie. So why not this score? And then you read the reviews. I mean, all you need to do is do a Google result search for the Zone of Interest review, and then containing the words Michael Levy, and you can see Variety, IndieWire, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, all of the reviews, every single one of them mentioned Michael Levy's haunting score, how beautiful it is, how strange it is, how she intertwines her screams and shrieks within the score. So she has someone who very rarely does film scores, but when she does do them, they're sort of events, so people are going to be keeping an eye out for her. The score is very unique, very singular, very different, very, Michael Levy-esque, and it's a highlight of the film, a film that I think is going to get nominated for Best Picture and potentially even Best Director. So why not is it going to get into a nomination for Best Score? Maybe it's not qualified, and I don't know about that yet, but from my research, it is still going to qualify and still going to campaign. So I'm just sort of shocked why people aren't really going to resonate with this. I expect them to resonate with the score, but I guess we'll have to see. Then a couple of my possible contenders, the first one being American Fiction, which is a very jazzy, upbeat score, which I think could maybe take the slot of Poor Things, in that this is a new composer who's never been nominated before, and the very jazzy, upbeat style of music, I think, pairs well with the witty dialogue. This is also a score that is different than all the other scores that we've talked about here, so just the fact that it's a new composer and it's different, it may take that Poor Things slot, so keep an eye out for American Fiction. And then my other possible contender is The Color Purple. This is from Chris Bowers, who also has his score for Origin is in contention, I think, and could be a possible contender as well. So the fact that he has two sort of possible contender type movies being nominated, that I think is a positive actually in this category. I don't think they're going to cannibalize each other. I think when people are actually listening to the scores, they'll appreciate the fact that he's done two great works and he'll be on top of people's minds. He hasn't been nominated before in the Best Score category, but he was nominated for Best Documentary Short. A Concerto is a Conversation just a couple of years ago. So I do think he is sort of in that club a little bit, so it would make sense for them to nominate him. And then of course The Color Purple is a musical, and we've seen musicals do well in this category. Encanto, Mary Poppins Returns got nominated in this category. So it's not rare for a musical to get nominated in this category. The question whether or not, for me, is The Color Purple a big-time Oscar contender, is a Best Picture nominee? And if it is a Best Picture nominee, then we should definitely consider The Color Purple here. Okay, now jumping over, we're going to discuss the Best Sound category, starting off with my first prediction, which is going to be Oppenheimer. This is another category where Oppenheimer is in the lead, and I actually think it's going to win for a lot of the same reasons as the Best Score category. First of all, you think of Nolan's past movies. Not only have they been nominated in this category, but they've actually won in this category. Inception won for Best Sound. Dunkirk won for Best Sound. And Interstellar got nominated. So we have a track record of Nolan's movies getting nominated in this category, so that always helps. I expect Oppenheimer to be right now the frontrunner to win Best Picture, so it should get a lot of these technical nominations. And then when you think about the movie, so much of the iconic moments of the movie have to do with the sound of the bomb going off, the sound of the stomping, the sort of shrieks that you hear in that stomping scene. Then to add on top of all of that, you'll have a dream team of sound designers with a combined 9 Oscars won by the sound designers of this film. I expect them to win one more after the Oscar season is over, so I'm very confident Oppenheimer will get a nomination here for Best Sound. Then my second prediction is going to go with Maestro. And if you're unaware, this category used to be split in two. It used to be the Best Sound Editing and the Best Sound Mixing category. So Oscar prognosticators like myself have been trying to figure out, ever since this category merged into just one, the Best Sound category, what types of movies are they going to nominate in this category? Traditionally sound editing movies or traditionally sound mixing movies? Because sound editing movies were always action movies, war epics, historical epics, and sound mixing movies often favored musicals or music-based movies. And what I found doing my analysis over the past 3 years is that they've traditionally nominated Best Sound Editing type movies in this category. And usually there's one, maybe two slots for the sort of traditional sound mixed movie. A classic example would be Bradley Cooper's last film, A Star is Born, got nominated for sound mixing, did not get nominated for Best Sound Editing. So the question now comes to me when I'm looking at my 5. There's usually one, maybe two, but usually I'm going to be conservative and predict one. What's going to be the sound mix, music-based movie that's going to get nominated in this category? And this year I went with Maestro. And I went with Maestro for a few reasons. Like I mentioned, Cooper's last movie got in for A Star is Born, so there's an appreciation of that. The fact that this is about the life of a composer, so oftentimes in the movie we stop to get great, big, grand sequences of him working, and through his art, music is an essential theme and part of the film. The question then becomes is, do people think of the music and then link that to the best sound and sound of the movie? Hard to say exactly for sure, but it is sort of a traditional sound mixing type of a nominee, so I expect it to get nominated here. The only thing I want to note is that even though I have it in my number 2 slot, this could potentially not even get nominated at all. And so there's intense volatility, because if you only think there's only going to be one slot, well then maybe it goes to a movie like The Color Purple, which also has a strong team of sound designers behind it, past nominees like Maestro. But it's a musical, so there's even more of a focus on the music in the film. The reason why ultimately I went with Maestro over The Color Purple is because I consider that a stronger Best Picture movie in terms of its chances to win, and I think it'll be a little more liked, so I gave it the edge there. Then my third slot, I'm going to go with Napoleon, which is a movie I didn't think would get nominated in this category when I sort of first looked at it. But the more I did research, the more it sort of illuminated itself to me that this is actually a movie with strong contention in terms of getting nominated in this category particularly. Why? Well, first of all, it's got a great team behind it. 2 names in particular, Paul Massey, Oliver Tarney, who have been nominated before and nominated quite frequently. Paul Massey got nominated in 22, 20, and won in 19. And Oliver Tarney got nominated in 22, 21, 20. So you have these 2 guys who have been really successful pretty recently in the past few years, and they started to build a great sort of track record and appreciation within the industry of these of 2 of the guys that people go to. So you see in this category, similarly to the Best Score category, a lot of sort of past nominees getting nominated. Guys like Andy Nelson or Stuart Wilson, who have, Andy Nelson I think has 24 nominations. Stuart Wilson is in the tens of nominations. There is sort of a certain group of guys that they like to go back to. So I think the fact that you have 2 well-established and appreciated sound designers working on this film and being considered for this film is a real positive for it. And then you consider the movie itself. It is sort of a sound editing type of a movie. Action sequences, cannons going off, gunfire, the battle sequences, they're very intense. So I think there'll be an appreciation of the sound of the film. And then, Ridley Scott's movies, I don't think this is going to be a big Oscar movie like The Martian or something. It's probably going to be something like The House of Gucci or The Last Duel, where it gets a couple of nominations. But this is still a $200 million auteur-driven historical epic. There is going to be some appreciation for the technical elements of the film. The question then becomes which technical elements, which categories. I think sound makes the most sense. And even though this isn't a big Oscar movie, I do think it's going to be a movie that's still appreciated because it's Ridley Scott, because of the technical elements and the sort of epic battle sequences that the movie has. Sound makes sort of clear sense to the content of the film, combined with the great success of the sound designers in terms of getting nominated. That sort of pushes it over the edge for a nomination. Then my 4th nomination, I'm going to go with Killers of the Flower Moon. And I'm picking this one because mostly of the strength of the film. I do think this is going to be a movie that gets nominated for Best Director and Best Picture and 3 acting awards. And this is also, when we look at the Best Sound category, sometimes it has nothing to do with Best Sound, and it just has to do with what movie is well liked. I mean, Joker got nominated. The Power of the Dog, Belfast got nominated for Best Sound. Do you really think of Belfast and the sound design of that movie? Not necessarily. I think people just really like Belfast and they wanted to nominate. I think similarly that the situation will happen here with Killers of the Flower Moon. But then also, there is sort of a great combination of score, original score, but then also, pre-existing music, which they sort of weave in and out. And then, of course, there's actually a little bit of a resonation, I think, thematically with the sound, because you have sort of the serenity and the peacefulness of the Osage community contrasted with the sound of the loud machinery of cars, of gunfire, of the sort of new world coming in, and the different sounds and sort of contrast of those 2 sounds that we utilize throughout the film. I think that will sort of help people, combine with the appreciation of the film, help people nominate it. And then my 5th slot, I'm going to go with Ferrari. And I think for some reason I'm a little bit more of a believer in Ferrari as an Oscar movie than some people. I don't think it's going to get in for picture, director, anything above the line, aside from maybe Penelope Cruz and Best Supporting Actress. But I do think it's going to get appreciated in some of these technical categories, because you think of, first of all, Michael Mann. And you think, Michael Mann, he's not an Oscar type of movie. He hasn't made a good movie in years. Maybe that's arguable, I think. But if you actually do look at the history of Michael Mann's movies, his most recent movies, Public Enemies, Miami Vice, Black Cat, they didn't get nominated for Oscars, you're right. But if you go further back, you realize that he has historically been an Oscar filmmaker. The Insider got nominated, Last of the Mohicans, Ali, Collateral. He has been nominated many times, his movies have been nominated many times for Oscars. And you look at some of the movies that didn't get nominated, Miami Vice, Public Enemies. Well, those were big blockbuster action movies that were released in the summer. Of course they weren't going to get nominated. But now you have Ferrari, a movie that played at the Venice Film Festival, played at festivals, is being released on Christmas. Everything tells us that this is being positioned as an Oscar movie. It's got decent enough reviews, better reviews than some of Mann's past films. And then you look at the talent behind it and you go, this is from Andy Nelson, who I mentioned earlier, who has 24 nominations and 2 Oscar wins. And this may be a situation where, he has 24 nominations, he's an old guy, he hasn't got nominated in years. Wrong. He got nominated twice last year. And then he got nominated 6 times in the 2010s. And he got nominated the year before that in 2021 for those films. So he's continually getting nominated year over year. And he even got nominated twice last year. So he's at the top of his game, very well respected. And then you think of the content of the film. This is a racing movie. Other racing movies like Ford v Ferrari have gotten nominated in this category and are well appreciated because you think of the sound, loud sound of the car, and then you cut to the inside of the car and the silence that comes because of that. Or you see the cars, zooming past you as you see Enzo on the side watching his cars go and race. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes the most sound, the obvious sound design movie will win, particularly for these technical categories. Most makes a lot of sense. So you have great talent behind it in Andy Nelson. You have Michael Mann, whose movies have gotten Oscar nominations in the past, so he's a respected filmmaker, I still think, in a movie that's positioned to be an Oscar movie, combined with the fact that this is a racing movie. The content of the movie makes sense to highlight the sound design. Even though not a lot of people are predicting this, I think this could be a sort of a surprise, come out of nowhere type of a nomination, or a nomination that gets nominated pretty early on, and then people, oh yes, I thought of Ferrari all along. No one's predicting it right now, but that's why you come to this channel. Watch out for Ferrari. I think it will get nominated. And then a couple possible contenders, the first one being The Killer. This is from Ren Kleiss, who is a well-known sound designer, I think, in the film community because he works on a lot of David Fincher's films, and he has been nominated many times. However, he doesn't really get nominated because people are in love with him or they really appreciate his work. He oftentimes gets nominated when Fincher's other movies, like The Social Network or Mank, are Oscar movies, and they sort of follow along with the appreciation of the film. The Killer, I think, is going to be more of a Gone Girl type of a movie, genre exercise. Won't get maybe any nominations, maybe one, and because of that, it's, I think, a little not Oscar enough, a little too genre focused, and I don't think people are going to respect it and see it as sort of this important achievement like the Oscars generally like to do. And because of that, I think someone like Ren will be pushed aside. And then my other possible contender is The Color Purple, which, like I mentioned earlier with Maestro, because this is a sound mixed movie, I'm keeping it on the outside, but it could very easily replace Maestro's slot in my 5 if that starts to clear itself up and that people actually appreciate the sound mixing. If we see some nominations from the guilds as the Oscar season goes on, I'll have to keep an eye out on that. And now, finishing off the episode with the Best Original Song category, my first prediction is going to be What Was I Made For from Barbie. And when predicting the Barbie songs that are going to get nominated, it's interesting because they're doing a very unique campaign strategy, which is actually to campaign 3 songs from the movie, which is pretty rare. In recent years, studios will sort of campaign for 2, but really only campaign for 1. It's rare that we see multiple songs from the same movie get nominated in this category. When it does happen, they're really well-liked movies. So La La Land got 2 nominations in this category. Slumdog Millionaire got 2 nominations in this category. So it's pretty rare, but it does happen. But what's the common denominator between those 2 movies? Slumdog Millionaire, of course, won Best Picture, and La La Land had 14 nominations, the most of a movie of all time, and 1 Best Director and 1 Best Picture for about a minute. Do I think Barbie's going to be that strong of a contender? I don't. So then the question then becomes, okay, which Barbie song are we going to predict? Are we going to predict the funny ones of I'm Just Ken, the poppy one, the Dua Lipa one, or are we going to predict the traditional Oscar one, the slow, emotional ballad that's key to the emotional center of the film from past winners Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas? That just makes most sense to me. So What Was I Made For, I think, will get the nomination for Barbie. Then my second nomination, I'm going to go with Keep It Movin' from The Color Purple. One of the Color Purple songs are going to get nominated here. It seems like the consensus right now is towards this movie because there's sort of a secret number 2 movie that they're going to maybe campaign, Fantasia's sort of ballad within the film. But this one's from Halle Bailey, who recently played Ariel in Little Mermaid, so she is a great singer, so I expect her to do a great job with this song. I haven't heard it yet because I haven't seen the film, so I will maybe change my predictions to maybe the other song, but at the end of the day, this is The Color Purple Best Picture contender. When we think of other musicals that have been in the Oscar conversation, Mary Poppins Returns, Encanto, Frozen, even they get nominated in this category. Just makes sense. Best Picture, musical, original, should easily get nominated. The Color Purple will get nominated in this category. The question is which song. Right now I have Keep It Movin'. Then my third prediction is going to be Road to Freedom from Rustin, and this is the motivational type of a song. We see this every year. There's always a motivational type of a movie. As a matter of fact, I pulled up, these are the types of nominations that have been done in the past for these motivational type movies. So they sound like Tell It Like a Woman, Be Alive, Fight for You, Stand Up, I'll Fight, Stand Up for Something. So we literally have Fight for You, then Stand Up, then I'll Fight, then Stand Up for Something. And then you go into the lyrics of this song, and they mention things about fighting for something and sacrifice. These types of songs, the Oscars absolutely love them every year. The sort of motivational type songs, anthems. Every year we see one. I think it's going to be this year, Rustin from Lenny Kravitz, Road to Freedom. Then in my fourth slot, I'm going to go with Gonna Be You from 80 for Brady. And you may go, Connor, what? 80 for Brady? An Oscar movie? No way. But if you know anything about this category, you know that there's one woman who is the queen of it, and that is Diane Warren. She's been nominated 14 times, going back all the way to the 1980s. And if you look at her past 9 years, 8 out of the 9 years she got nominated. That's right, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 6 years in a row she's been nominated in this category. And she gets nominated for movies you haven't even heard of. She'll get nominated for movies that barely have a release because she's that well respected and appreciated within the industry. So the question is not whether or not she's going to get nominated. She's going to get nominated. The question is which of the movies that she's done this year is going to get nominated. The sort of competing movies right now are Flamin' Hot or 80 for Brady. And if you heard the Flamin' Hot song, ultimately I went with 80 for Brady because a Flamin' Hot song was from pop star Becky G, and it's a very poppy, bright type of a song. This group doesn't really like those types of songs. They like the more of the traditional, slower ballads. And the 80 for Brady song, Gonna Be You, isn't a traditional ballad. It is somewhat energetic, but it's not from a pop star and Becky G. It's from old people favorites, Dolly Parton and Gloria Estefan. And I also think at the end of the day, 80 for Brady was released in theaters, so it feels like more of a real movie that I think will appreciate to the older members of the Academy versus something like Flamin' Hot, which was sort of dumped on Disney Plus, and it probably won't be as seen as much as something like 80 for Brady. 80 for Brady seems to have a little bit more of a general brand recognition from old people favorites, Gloria Estefan and Dolly Parton. So I put that in for my fourth slot for my Diane Warren slot. And then in my fifth slot, I'm going to go with The Wish from Wish. And on last week's episode, I predicted it to get nominated in the Best Animated Feature category because 8 out of the last 10 Walt Disney Animation Studios movies got nominated in this category. And it was pretty much a situation where, well, if this movie doesn't sort of underperform at the box office and get terrible critical reviews, it should sort of cruise its way to a nomination. But what happened in the meantime between last episode and this episode? Wish came out, it did terribly at the box office, it has terrible, poor critical reviews, and that may really hurt its chances. So that's why I have this in the fifth slot and not even higher, because it may not get nominated for Best Animated Feature, so it may not get nominated in this category either. I just still have it in my predictions though, because I'm not going to bet against Disney, because a Disney musical almost always gets nominated in these categories. Even Disney, the company, whether it be the Black Panther songs that got nominated in recent years. It seems like every year there's always a Disney song from a Disney movie that gets nominated in this category. And I feel weird to not have the key song from a Disney musical that's released in late November that's going to be on the top of everyone's minds for a movie that's probably going to be coming out in Disney Plus before voting finalizes in December. So people are going to be hearing it if they have kids playing on Disney Plus, because it did poorly at the box office. I think it's going to come to Disney Plus rather quickly. I think that will sort of, like Encanto, maybe doesn't do amazing at the box office, but sort of gets a good buzz when it releases on home video. I think ultimately that may sort of push over the edge, but right now it's not looking good for Wish. And then my possible contenders, my first one is going to be I'm Just Ken from Barbie. And I don't want to break the internet, but you heard it here first. I don't think I'm Just Ken's going to get nominated. Too comedic of a song. Like I mentioned, they very rarely nominate two songs from the same movie. So if you have I'm Just Ken in there and not What Was I Made For, that's understandable. But I think this is going to be the one that the internet's going to cry about when Oscar nominations come out, that we won't have this performed at the Oscars. It's just rare to have a comedic song like this, and it being the second song from Barbie, it doesn't bode well for its chances, in my opinion. But who knows? Maybe Barbie is going to be more well-liked of an Oscar movie than I think it is, but right now I've been sort of on the negative side of Barbie as an Oscar movie in terms of getting nominations. I don't think it's going to get in for director, and maybe not even Gosling, so we'll see about that. And then my other possible contender is Quiet Eyes from Past Lives, which is a movie that is independent, right? It's an indie type of movie, Sundance movie, so if people want to nominate the song, they may do it for the same reason they want to nominate the film, because they really like the movie, and because this isn't a Lenny Kravitz or a well-known name. It is more of an independent artist too, so there's sort of that push for it that is maybe a little bit more sophisticated and highbrow and prestige than a Disney musical type song for, say, Wish. But I think at the end of the day I have it on the outside, because do people really think of the original song from Past Lives? I think a lot of people don't even know it has an original song. That, I think, will hurt its chances, so I have it on the outside. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, your predictions for this category. I'd love to hear it, where I'm wrong, why I'm anti-Barbie. I'd love to discuss that if you desire in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video, but we always have videos Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. But over the next couple of weeks, I'm thinking of maybe doing another video during the week as well, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.